Fire prevention, we have different levels of fire prevention or inside of fire prevention. Everything from fire prevention officers all the way through fire prevention engineers. Engineers deal more with like how you build sprinkler systems and how the buildings are actually constructed before they go up, where fire prevention officers and inspectors are the ones who come out annually or sometimes semi-annually or sometimes every 2 years to inspect to ensure that the business is following code and enforcing any violations, and therefore asking them to fix or to mitigate the infraction to fix it. Very rarely do fire prevention officers actually do what we call a cease and desist order. That's very egregious, typically egregious provocation on the part of the business owner. They have to be doing some pretty crappy things to be shut down, albeit it does happen from time to time. And then one of the more sexy and glamorous or romantic positions in the fire department is the arson investigator. If you think back to Backdraft, it was a fairly famous role in the movie. They kind of carry the badge on their hip and carry a gun. They have to be post-certified, and they actually have the ability to arrest people depending on the circumstances that they find themselves in. Staff and support functions. As we talked about earlier, the fire department health and safety officer who really lives in the NFPA 1500 and 1521. We don't formally have that role identified, at least to my knowledge, as of yet. Chief Bondus and Captain Johnson probably moonlight in that role right now. Most fire departments do ask that the training officer follows the health and safety officer role. However, like at my fire department where I'm full-time, I'm the training officer, and it actually falls on one of our battalion chiefs, so it does depend. Telecommunications can be part of the fire department and sometimes not. That's referring to the dispatch center. In the case of Timberline, ours is run by the county sheriff's office, all the way through clerical staff like Miss Jennifer Hinderman, who takes care of our clerical and kind of business functions. All right, we're almost done here. We're doing pretty good on time here. Chain of command, we talked about that before. Chain of command is simply a structured way to identify who's in control and who your boss is. That also kind of falls in line with unity of command. And what unity of command truly means in its most boiled down level is that every person has one person they report to. And so if you imagine yourself sitting at Station 5 and you encounter a problem, having good unity of command would look like you knowing who you report to convey that problem. Having poor unity of command would be a situation where you're like, do I go to my shift lieutenant? Do I go to my training officer? Chief Bondus seems to be a really cool guy. Maybe I'll go to him. And that can really create ripples in the good order of the organization if that's not outlined. So all of you who are attending this academy for unity of command, once you go online and start shifting, you will typically report first to your shift lieutenant. However, in the role of the academy, for the time you're in academy, that would look more like Captain Johnson. So if you have issues with the academy, you'll go to Chief Johnson, hence the unity of command. We also have things like span of control. So I talked about that earlier. If you think about, for those of you who have kids, I don't have kids, but I have 2 dogs, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go take my dogs for a walk. And you think, well, how many dogs could I walk at one time before they're unmanageable? Or extrapolate that for children who I wish to never have those beings in my area I cohabitate in. But if you're somebody who does have kids, it's like, well, how many kids can I manage before I lose my mind? Well, we as fire officers kind of had the same idea. Span of control has been around in the military for many, many, many centuries, and we've come to a good number, which I said earlier. Typically, that sweet spot's 3 to 5 and sometimes 7. But for your testing, the sweet spot answer is 5. So that basically means as a single person, I can manage 5 people at one time and do a pretty good job of watching everything they're doing. We also have division of labor. And division of labor basically means we're delegating our membership or the functions of our assignments out to the group to get the mission accomplished. So if you think about a structure fire and we have 3 engines responding to the incident and 2 tenders and a command car, we want to have a good division of labor to ensure each assignment we're trying to compete, i.e. fire suppression, rescue and search, exposures, rehab, those all have the appropriate amount of people to get the assignment done. A poor example of division of labor would be a large residential structure fire, like a 5,000 square foot mountain residence, and expecting 2 firefighters to go interior and put the entire fire out. That would be a poor example of division of labor. A good example would be on that same example, having 3 crews of 3 conducting search and rescue from 3 different locations. That might be a good example of division of labor. And then finally is discipline, and that's just ensuring that all members of the organization maintain discipline and good order, to communicate directly with their supervisor and expect that the supervisor communicates directly with them. It also has to do with carrying out assignments or mission sets that your officers ask you to do quickly and swiftly. And typically on austere environments like the structure fire ground, to carry out those assignments without asking questions. When we're back at the station or doing training, that's oftentimes for you to ask the most important 3-letter word, which is why. But when we're actually doing the work, we kind of expect you guys to do what we ask, unless something is really out there or significantly risking your life. In your own internal risk assessment, you're like, I don't really agree with that decision my captain's made. You may have a brief conversation and then make a decision off of that. Locate your information in department documents. So this is a JPR, job performance review or requirement, and it's also a test question. Basically, it's going to say where are the locations at which you can find your JPRs. For the test, I believe it's like a bulletin board. But for the JPR that you'll actually do in person with a proctor, the right answer would be I would find my department standards and codes on Target Solutions. You could say the internet or the intraweb. That's INTRA, intraweb, which is technically what it is. But if you just say it's on Target Solutions, you're going to pass the JPR. Code standards and protocols are kind of what we live and die by in a lot of ways. As you tenure in the fire service, you'll learn a lot of that lives in the gray. But as a new member, we really ask you to abide by the letter of the law. And then as you get experience and time on the job, you can kind of increase your gray space, if you will, and kind of ask a few questions why. And you'll be, what I said earlier on my introduction, I love new firefighters because they give me a whole new perspective on things I think I was doing right for a real long time. And they're like, dude, I don't really think what you're saying is real smart. And then I think about it, I'm like, man, that's actually a good idea. So nobody here is suggesting you can't have a voice or speak up. But as new members, going back to that discipline and good order, that's why we have standards and protocols, so you can read from a manual and know where we're at before you have to get into those situations. Distinguishing SOPs from rules and regulations. So this is what I talked about earlier. They may be in a bulletin board, i.e. your standards, SOPs, policies, procedures. They may be posted, but for our purposes, they're located in Target Solutions. Policies, procedures, standards, and protocols are going to be very detailed and descriptive test questions. So I need you guys to get in your books as well as review this PowerPoint, because the bullet points are basically the question set. It's like Jeopardy, and then it'll say what of the 4 different options, which is it. So it'd be, you know, the guide to decision making is a policy, procedure, standard, or protocol, etc. And you need to know the right ones. Policies are basically a set of decision making tools that we use. An example of that would be the steps to minimize or manage a hazmat call. Procedures are actually the step-by-step process of how we do something. So an example of that might be how we properly operate a pump, i.e. step 1, In-cab procedures. Step 2, chalk the wheels. Step 3, pull your tank to pump, etc. So think of procedures more as a 1 through 10 step-by-step list, and policies kind of being the rule book for how we do those actual operations, or sometimes how we manage personnel. We have laws, statutes, and ordinances. Those can oftentimes be directed by federal, state, or local mandates or authorities. An example of that would be like you can't drive a fire apparatus, just like you can't drive a vehicle under the influence of alcohol. That would be an example of a law. However, a policy would state at Timberline Fire, you can have no trace of alcohol, i.e. anything above 0.00 BAC. So that's a difference between a policy and a standard or a law. I'm sorry, not a standard, but just a law. Codes and standards, those are a sense of principles, protocols, etc. Codes can be a collection of rules. The way I think of code, I think of the International Fire Code that fire prevention or fire engineers use. That's literally like 1.276-42 is this standard, or this code is a good way to remember that. And then orders and directives can sometimes be documented and sometimes not directed. As you can see there, they can be issued by top command, and they can also be implemented department policies. So Chief Honor may say, we will not respond to any COVID positive calls moving forward, and he may put out a memo. That would be an example of a directive from the fire chief to the fire department members saying you are no longer allowed to run any COVID positive calls. That is not the case, that's just an example. We interact with a lot of people from around the local area. We oftentimes call them external stakeholders. Examples of that may be EMS and hospitals like the Gilpin Ambulance. And it might also be the EOC or emergency management, like the Gilpin Emergency Management team that we're currently working with for COVID-19. And that may include law enforcement. It may also include utility companies, public works, media, and other agencies. When you do your test, it may say an example of a public works organization is blank, and you would have to say something like road and bridge or a dump truck, etc. And I think that's it, guys. I pulled out all the review questions because they're not really worthwhile. Let me take you off screen share here. So I know tonight we covered a lot. We talked about fire service history, kind of a homegrown class. And then we talked about a lot of IFSTA-based information. The main thing you need to remember about this chapter, in my opinion, is it's one of the most intensive chapters to remember NFPA standards against what they're actually telling you the standard is. The other part of that too is memorizing the different major fires, the times, locations, and dates, and the remarkable outcomes of those fires. And then getting into detail about remembering what a protocol, policy, procedure, standard, etc. is. So don't just glaze over this first chapter because it's less than 30 pages. There's a lot that can get you and bite you in the butt on your state test if you don't remember to go back to this chapter. Chief Bondis wrote in the chapter notes, pro tip, write down each NFPA standard you see in your textbook and maybe keep that in one area that you can review all those standards as a quick reference when you study for your state test. Up to this point, that concludes my period of instruction, unless you guys have any questions for me. You got one? There you go.
Yeah, it's not about the chapter. I'm going to be up there tomorrow, and I just wanted to clarify that you guys do want us to bring our bunker gear home so we can practice putting it on, right, and do the videos?
Yeah, as long as it's clean, you're welcome to do that for the time being, to get those 60-second drills down for now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Does anyone TikTok?
You millennials.
All you guys are lying. I know that bullshit. In fact,
I know we're the same age, but you're a millennial. It's terrible.
Yeah, I'm a mid-30s something, and I TikTok.
I need to spell that so I can look it up.
So, it's right on the homepage of your phone. I know that. the reason I bring that up on a serious note is we understand that your bunker gear going home is not in the normal sense the right procedure, but these are pretty outstanding times and we want you to get the benefit of your gear. Out of respect for the fire service and for our organization, please do not post pictures of you at home with your bunker gear doing cool things. It's not cool on TikTok and it really makes bad light of Timberline. We're doing this out of the needs of the COVID pandemic, and it really reflects poorly. A lot of times, especially on TikTok, which is a major epicenter of pretty egregious fire service history and tradition, a lot of fire departments are dealing with political fallout because firefighters are making 9 or 10-second videos of stupid stuff at the job, and it's getting out to the public. So I just ask you to respect that, and please think about that when you take your gear home with you. Chief Ondas, Captain Johnson, that concludes my stuff. If you've got anything.
No, I think that was a great session. You know, it's a pretty dry chapter, but you know, like I mentioned at the beginning, Captain Williams is a student of the craft, and you know, constantly lives in that growth mindset. And you know, I've sat through that chapter quite a few times, and it's always entertaining to sit through, and I always learn something new when Mark teaches it. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. You know, I put it in the comments there, but the NFPA standards and like Captain Williams mentioned, Chapter 1 is something that'll totally bite you in the ass if you're not ready for it when it comes time for the state test. So keep those NFPA standards in check, and you know, going through the whole book, and then the major fires that they mention in those bulleted lists are definitely something that's worth reviewing, especially as we get further into the more, you know, heady stuff. It's pretty easy to forget the basics, but this is, you know, as Cap mentioned, this is where we came from, and it's something we need to keep front of mind, certainly for the Fire 1 test, and then I think Captains Williams and Johnson would agree, you know, beyond that, we got to know where we've been to know where we're going.
I'll in the comments, I'll leave my, I run a Instagram page. It's not anything cool, but I put a lot of history in there. Like you said, I'm real into history and I tie it in with modern techniques and stuff. So I'll give you my Instagram because it eventually will come out anyways to you guys. Feel free to look at that, comment on it. A lot of times what I'll do is before I teach a lesson, I'll post something that's not covered in the chapter, but kind of really parallels in or parlays well into what we're talking about. So it's just another resource for you guys to look at. Oh, it says I'm Chris Bondas. Look at that.
Yeah, I already follow you, man. I don't need that.
Oh man.
We're friends.
And that's not a plug-in for me to be like, oh, like me. I spend a lot of time trying to craft documents that are pretty cool. I hope you guys might enjoy it. It's really just education and kind of something creative for me to do when I'm cooped up in this house right now. So just something to think about.
So just to let you guys know, the whole concept of letting you bring your gear home, it's to give you some tactile aspect to the academy, that we're not together. I can't make you do push-ups. I can't, you know, slap you on the back for doing something great or doing something wrong. It's just meant to give you something to, you know, help with the stir craziness. And I have one volunteer that already, you know, who's been through the academy. He sent me a video. It's just an interaction tool. So we'll work on fleshing that out. I found out that I got a message while we were in academy that the gear bags are in, the balance of the order is in. So if you don't have a new gear bag from us, the reason I'm getting you gear bags is because well, two reasons. One, to carry your gear around, keep it separate and kind of have some barrier between other things you have in your trunk or in the back of your truck or whatever. The other reason is when it's in your car, ultraviolet light can damage the gear. So it's really adamant from Ward, our maintenance coordinator, who takes care of that gear as best he can with what we have until we get more, to keep it in good shape. So it provides that barrier as well. With that is your pet rope, which will be for you to work on the ropes and knots and that aspect. So I'll work on getting that to you guys. I kind of have a list of who I've gotten it to and who I haven't. Any questions on the logistics or the online platforms or anything in general for me or Chief Bondas about Academy that we haven't answered or is confusing? Go ahead, Johnny.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. The question I had was regarding the testing on the ISSTA website. You want us to retake those examinations until we get 100%. Is that correct?
Yeah, the IFSTA is an online resource that is free because we use their textbook, and it just gives you some really good reps to understand the types of questions that they'll ask, the format that they put them in. There's not necessarily a grade to that. When you see the chapter test on like 5 different chapters on our schedule, that one will be in class and online with Target Solutions, which will immediately grade it. You'll get, we'll know your results and that kind of thing right away. We're going to put that in there. The IFSTA Moodle tests are just a resource for you guys to take. We would like you to complete them and get them to 100%. I don't care if it takes you 3 times or 35 times. It just shows that you're putting the time and the effort in to get those as we go along, and then go back and take them as you prep for the test. Is that accurate, Chief, on this?
Yeah, I look at the Moodle quizzes as those are a study tool for you guys. Those pull directly from the test bank that you'll see on your state test. So that's why we don't limit the number of attempts. Use those. Even if you get 100% on them, use those as we get further and further down the Academy schedule as a study tool to go back and test your knowledge, your base knowledge on the stuff we covered 6 weeks ago. They're a really powerful tool. Those combined with the IFSTA app, was it Essentials app, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Those are 2 really good ways to get yourself prepped for the state test.
There's another testing bank out there. So in the world of NFPA testing, there's basically 2 testing banks. There's the IFSTA and then the Jones and Bartlett test bank. I'm going to put it in the comments here. The department is not, to my knowledge, going to reimburse you for the one I'm putting on here, but I believe if you pass the state test, they will reimburse you for the IFSTA one. Is that correct, Chief Bondas?
That's correct.
All right. So this one is another one. The nice thing about this is this pulls from the Jones and Bartlett's testing bank, and the question sets are much more descriptive and much more finite, meaning they're very, very detailed on specific definitions. How I recommend is if you want to go above and beyond, get this one. I think it's $9. The IFSTA one is a good one to say, okay, I'm pretty good up to the state test level. This one that I just mentioned to you will really solidify you truly know the knowledge at a very high level. And if you take the Moodle quizzes and the test and the Target Solutions test and the IFSTA app and the Flashfire, that will give you nearly every test question in the bank. So that's just something to think about. And I'd highly encourage you to think about using all of them if you want to get it done the first time.
Yeah, I would echo that. Flashfire is definitely a good one to look at as well. And both of those, you can kind of create your own tests from the content. So as we get later down the road, you can test all of the chapters in one go and make yourself a mock 100-question DFPC test. So that's a really good way to get through it. And we've seen good success. All of us on the cadre, as well as folks we put through our academies, have had good success with that.
If you guys, I don't know if you got active speaker or not, but that's what it looks like right there. Flashfire Essentials. For Android users, at least, it looks like this. Really good tool.
Any other questions?
I just have one real quick. Was the audio? Do you guys have any IT concerns with how this was laid out? Was I clear? Okay, cool.
All right. Next chapter is chapter 2. So reference your schedule there. There's also going to be kind of a side assignment. We found some good value in a building construction. It's just a 6-hour class, but again, it draws from some of that science that they've been able to put together with the funding that the National Fire Academy and other East Coast organization heads that have all pulled their money together to do some science and put together. And so we just think it's a really good snapshot and basic knowledge for building construction. So I'll send that out probably tomorrow morning. It'll be an assignment in Target Solutions that'll take you to a link, much like your ICS classes. And it's, like I said, it's a 6-hour class with FEMA on building construction. So start to chip away at that this weekend, or at least just kind of start it and make sure you get off the ground. I'm trying to just kind of build together the instructions for it. You have to ask for a username with FEMA, wait 2 hours, and then activate the account, that kind of thing. So I'll try and spell it out real easy. If you have problems with it, I'll be around this weekend, can help you get into it. But that'll be a writer assignment along with your chapter 2 for next class. And if you think of something over the weekend or whenever on how to make this better, just fire off a text or an email. I think this was a good introductory offering for a web-based class, and we'll continue to learn together and as an organization.
I think we've got chapters 2 and 3 on the 7th. Is that correct, Cap?
You're right. I'm sorry, 2 and 3. So health and wellness and communication. If there's nothing else, I'm going to be at my computer for a little bit. If you want to talk one-on-one, you can send me an email or send me a text or give me a phone call. I will get out also this weekend or tomorrow morning a roster so that you have communication aspects for everyone that's in your class, along with the instructor cadre. I encourage you to figure out if someone lives somewhat nearby that you can talk to or meet for coffee, or just go to a parking lot and sit in the back hatch of your car 7 feet away and talk or tell stories or whatever. It's part of the academy that I unfortunately can't give you, but you guys can make it happen on your own.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry we went a little bit late tonight. The intro stuff generally takes always longer than we planned for. So thanks again for being flexible and joining us here, and look forward to talking to everybody hopefully before Tuesday, when you get to stare at my face for an hour and a half while I talk about radios and all sorts of stuff that's exciting.
Awesome.